So the Transforming Learning Accelerator, the goal of this, the impact, is to really, after 10 years, revolutionize the possibilities for learning. That the job of this accelerator is to advance discovery, invention, and partnership so that the pace of possibilities increases exponentially. You think about things like when the first cell phone came out, you wouldn't have imagined smartphones, and yet they paved the way for that possibility. So here, this isn't a race to a single audacious solution, but rather it's an entirely new way of thinking about education and transforming learning. It's a way to open possibilities that we just couldn't have ever imagined before. So why learning? Well, learning is correlated with just about every positive outcome that you care about: longevity, democracy, happiness. A lack of learning is correlated with about every bad outcome you care about: incarceration, poverty, disease. So the challenge here is that the access to quality learning is very unevenly distributed, and it's a threat to all that we want for our children in society. So why is this? Well, I think from the vantage of a university, we really think about what can we do to make a difference? And current mechanisms have broadly failed to harness research from the university to create effective, accessible, and adopted solutions that work for all classes of learners. And so you can ask yourself, why might that be the case? Well, one is the theory of change that people have. So oftentimes I talk to people and they say, boy, that education, it's such a big ship to turn. How are you going to ever do that? And I have some compassion for this. It is the second largest sector after healthcare. In the US, there's over 2 million teachers. That's more than the doctors, lawyers, and engineers. So it is a massive enterprise. And thinking about it this way leads you to sort of get magical thinking. You say, well, maybe if we just got a bigger rudder or something, we could turn this ship. The problem is, this just isn't the nature of education. This is the nature of education and learning. It's incredibly decentralized. Everybody has different interests and values. A Montessori school is going to look very different than a military school, than an urban school, right? And there was, you really got a taste of this during COVID. My memory is that the New York Times had an article that said 13,000 school districts, 13,000 different teaching solutions during COVID. So you can see there's not one owner. Is it the parents, the union, the teachers, the superintendent, the district, the county, the state, the federal government? And it's incredibly decentralized. So how do you address this? How can we make a difference? The first is to recognize this is the nature of the beast. And the one thing that's true about all these different boats that represent different kinds of learning opportunities is they all have learners. So you really want to start with the nature of the learner. So I think there are, right now, there are game changers that can advance things where we couldn't before. One is data. So education has always been very data thin. You get the end of the year exam scores, for example, and that just misses so much, right? And if you don't have good evidence, it's really hard to do continual improvement, right? It's very hard for a school or a teacher or a student to know that the things they're doing are actually making a difference. There's no data to provide feedback. So this is going to change, right? We're going to have many, many more kinds of data, heterogeneous data that comes from sensors, that comes from the computer, comes from many, many different places. And so I think this can be a big game changer. A second one is technology. So a lot of people think of technology as a way to deliver things at scale, but it's important to remember it also changes the design possibilities. So about 20 years ago, or now, there are science simulations on the computer. Say they can allow you to see the day-night cycle and why it works the way it does, and you can change the orbits and the tilt of the Earth. This just was impossible 20 years ago, right? So it's a fundamentally new way and possibility for teaching. Zoom, I think, was a revelation to people, the kinds of things that you can now do remotely over video conferencing. And so you want to figure out, how can we take this and work it and deliver at scale? The third is the learning and brain sciences. So this has been going on probably 30 years. There's been continual growth in this area where we really now understand how people learn, why they learn, when they learn. And the advantage of this is it enables us to make more flexible and personalized learning because we can really tune to the needs of different groups of students. So the challenge here is how to put these things together, right? So that we can have action. And so the first piece is that the Transforming Learning Accelerator really works to bring together science and design. So design here means things like small group structures, curriculum, ways of orchestrating classrooms, right? And the great advantage of design is it's the fastest way to render knowledge into a usable form, right? So we couple science that tries to understand and tests good designs, and we use designs to help disseminate our discoveries. A second pillar of the accelerator is to be learner-centered. So you don't want to start with the assumption of an average student. You want to start with the needs of specific groups of students. For example, early childhood. You want to focus on that. That's different than focusing on high school. This seems obvious to be learner-centered, but surprisingly, it's not. That there's a lot of people who are labor-centered. They talk about the professional workforce. There are people who are topic-centered. What should be in the curriculum? And that's how you start the question. Here, we really start with what is the nature of the learner that you're trying to address. And then the third is pathways to impact. If we want to make a difference, we need to work with partners and we need to design in situ. We need to create things that fit the environment so that people want to adopt them. And we need partners to help us test and prove that our ideas are successful and work well. So there's three pieces that tie the Transforming Learning Accelerator together. It's learner-centered, it has science and design, and there's pathways to impact. And so there's a lot of activity going on right now. One of my favorite is we had a digital learning design challenge. In the middle of the pandemic, we opened it up for the students to come up with their own designs to address the kinds of things that have been lost when you no longer have an in-person experience. And so we provided them with expertise in the science of learning, expertise in design, and now we're at the stage where they're pitching it to try and find good partners to bring their ideas and tailor them to the conditions of use.